Grieve, pack your things, and don't come back. My daughter-in-law, Lauren, declared at dinner, her voice slicing through the heavy silence. My son, Ethan, offered a faint smile and a nod, his agreement silent but unmistakable. This house was never truly yours. I left the table without a word. The next morning I visited the bank, grateful for the clarity it brought. Follow my story to its end, and share the city you're reading from. I'd love to know how far my words travel. The dining room felt hollow without James' presence. The oak table, once the heart of countless family gatherings, now loomed too vast, too empty, despite the three of us seated around it. My eyes kept drifting to his vacant chair, half expecting his warm smile to anchor me, as it always had. It had been 1 week since we laid my husband, of 32 years, to rest. 1 week since I stood by his grave, the weight of loss tearing at my soul. Grief pressed against my chest, making each breath a struggle. "Pass the green beans," Lauren said sharply, her tone like a shard of ice. My daughter-in-law had never spoken to me with warmth, but tonight, her voice carried a new edge. My hands, still unsteady from the funeral, reached for the dish. At 71, I thought I'd steeled myself for this loss, but nothing could have prepared me for the gaping void that followed me now. Ethan, my 43-year-old son, sat between us, a silent arbiter who'd already picked a side. His gaze stayed fixed on Lauren, his wife of 15 years, avoiding mine entirely. The boy who once sought comfort in my arms during sleepless nights now seemed a stranger. "The service was lovely, wasn't it?" I ventured, desperate to ease the tension. "Your father would have been touched by the turnout." Lauren set her fork down with calculated precision. "Yes, well, that's what we need to talk about, Eleanor." Her tone sent a chill through me. I searched her face, then Ethan's, for any trace of the familial warmth that should bind us in shared grief. Instead, I found only cold resolve in her eyes and uneasy avoidance in his. "What do you mean?" I asked, dread coiling in my stomach. Lauren straightened, adopting the commanding posture she used for ultimatums, familiar from times she dictated when Ethan could visit or why our family traditions no longer suited her. "Ethan and I have discussed it," she began, her voice dripping with false concern. "With James gone, this house is too much for you to manage alone." I blinked, caught off guard. "Too much? I've cared for this home for over 30 years. I know every warped floorboard and stubborn pipe." "Exactly," Lauren countered, her polite facade thinning. "You're not getting younger, and a house this size is costly to maintain. Ethan and I believe it's time for you to move somewhere more practical." Her words struck like a blow. Move? This was my home, where James and I had woven our life together. "This is where Ethan grew up," I said, my voice trembling with the weight of memory. Ethan finally spoke, his words barely audible. "Mom, Lauren's right. The maintenance on this place will overwhelm you." "I'm not helpless, Ethan," I replied, my voice cracking. "This house, your father and I scraped together every penny to buy it. Every corner holds pieces of our life." Lauren's face tightened, her eyes unyielding. "Memories don't cover utility bills or property taxes, Eleanor. Be realistic." I stared at the woman who over 15 years had steadily distanced me from my son. She deemed Sunday dinners with me too demanding, skewed holiday visits toward her family. "What are you proposing?" I asked, dread solidifying in my gut. "A senior living community," Lauren said, her tone implying she was granting me a grand favor. "Somewhere with activities, people your age, better than wandering this empty house alone." I turned to Ethan, searching for any hint of dissent. "You really think I should sell the home where you grew up, where your father and I built our life?" "It makes sense, Mom," he cut in, eyes averted. "And honestly, Lauren and I need the space. We're thinking of growing our family. This house has potential." His words hit like ice water. They didn't just want me out. They wanted my home, the one James and I had painstakingly restored over 3 decades. "Now that James is gone, grieve, pack, and leave," Lauren said, her voice stripped of any warmth. "This house was never yours." The words cut deep, flung with the casual cruelty of discarding worn furniture. Ethan glanced up, a flicker of unease, or guilt, in his eyes. But then he nodded. "She's right, Mom. This was Dad's house, and now it's mine. You were just staying here." The room spun. Just staying here? As if 32 years of marriage, of raising a family, meant nothing more than temporary lodging. I see, I said, my voice steadier than my heart. Inside, my understanding of my son, my family, shattered. I stood, legs unsteady. I'll need time. 2 weeks, Lauren interrupted. Plenty of time to find a place and hire movers. 2 weeks. Not months to grieve or plan. Just 14 days to unravel a lifetime. Ethan finally met my gaze, but what I saw was worse than anger, indifference. It's for the best, Mom, he said, as if convincing himself. You'll see. I climbed the stairs to the bedroom I'd shared with James. Each step felt like scaling a cliff. The room still carried his scent, his reading glasses untouched on the nightstand from the night his heart failed. Sitting on our bed, I caught my reflection in the dresser mirror, a woman older than her 71 years, silver hair dull, blue eyes dimmed by betrayal. In 2 weeks, I'd leave this room where I'd bid James farewell just 7 days ago. Packing 32 years into boxes, surrendering it to a son who claimed I'd never belonged. But in the dimming light, a spark of resolve ignited beneath the grief. James had always managed our finances, but he'd taught me to be meticulous, to notice details. Tomorrow, I'd take action. I'd visit the bank and uncover exactly what I was owed. If Ethan and Lauren thought they could erase me without a fight, they were mistaken. 10 days had passed since that brutal dinner, and the house felt like it was waiting for my departure. Ethan and Lauren had visited twice, measuring rooms, planning renovations as if I were a ghost. Yesterday, I overheard Lauren on the phone with a contractor, discussing updates once the old woman's gone. I'd spent those days in a fog, sorting possessions while anxiety knotted my stomach. But this morning, clarity broke through. I was ready to face the practicalities James would have expected me to tackle. The 15-minute drive to First National Bank wound through familiar neighborhood streets. For 20 years, I'd made this trip, usually with James handling our accounts while I waited in the car. He'd shielded me from financial burdens, not out of distrust, but to spare me worry. Now, I regretted not learning more. Mrs. Harper, the bank manager Susan, greeted me with the gentle tone reserved for widows. I was so sorry about James. He always asked about my kids. Thank you, Susan. He thought highly of you, I said, settling into the chair across her desk, clutching my purse. I need to understand my financial situation. James handled everything, and I'm a bit lost. Susan nodded, her expression kind. Of course, let's review your accounts. Her fingers tapped the keyboard, then her brows lifted. Is something wrong? My heart raced. Had Ethan and Lauren already touched our accounts? Not wrong exactly, Susan said, surprised. There are more accounts than I expected. She printed a statement and slid it over. The joint checking account balance was modest, but sufficient for months if I was frugal. Relief washed over me. I wouldn't be penniless. There's also a savings account in both your names, Susan added, handing me another sheet. The sum was substantial, enough to sustain me for years. That's a relief, I said, tension easing. James was always diligent about saving. Yes, very methodical, Susan agreed. But her frown lingered on the screen. Mrs. Harper, I'm seeing several accounts that need verification, some in your name alone, Susan said, her tone measured. When did you last review your full financial portfolio with James? In my name, I echoed bewildered. That can't be right. James handled everything. Susan's fingers danced across the keyboard. Our records show 4 additional accounts, 2 CDs, a money market account, and, curiously, a trust fund set up 5 years ago. My mind reeled. James never mentioned these. Susan paused, choosing her words. Did your husband ever express concerns about family dynamics? Sometimes clients create separate accounts for protection. The question jolted me. Protection? What do you mean? Complex family situations, Susan said delicately, like inheritance disputes or external pressures, can prompt clients to secure their spouse's future. I thought of James's behavior in recent years, his pointed questions about Lauren's spending, his silence when Ethan mentioned financial woes, his insistence on managing our banking alone, even when Ethan offered to help. Can you tell me about these accounts? I asked, my voice barely audible. Susan handed me several printouts. The first CD has rolled over annually for 7 years. The second opened 3 years ago. The money market account receives small automatic transfers from your joint checking, $50 here and there, but they've added up. The numbers on the statements blurred before me. These weren't small emergency funds, they were substantial, enough to buy a home or live comfortably for decades. How is this possible? I asked. I never signed anything. You did, Susan said gently, producing a folder. Your signatures are on the paperwork. James likely brought you in for what he called routine updates, address changes, new account types. I stared at my signature on forms I didn't recall signing. The dates aligned with vague memories. A day we updated our address, a switch to a new checking account. He never explained what I was signing, I whispered. It's not uncommon, Susan said. Some spouses handle details to spare their partner stress. Legally, these accounts are yours. As I processed this, Ethan and Lauren were likely measuring my kitchen, plotting renovations, treating me like a burden. Yet I held resources they knew nothing about. There's more, Susan added cautiously. The trust account receives transfers from a business account, Harper Construction Trust, for the past 5 years. Yes, but James sold the business when he retired, I said. Ethan told me the sale barely covered debts. Susan frowned at her screen. Our records show the business account is active, with regular deposits and transfers to your trust. You should speak with the business accountant. There may be more to your finances than you know. I left the bank in a daze, my purse heavy with statements. Instead of driving home, I parked at a quiet cafe and pored over the documents. The numbers were undeniable. James had been quietly securing my future. The trust account deposits aligned with Ethan's visits over the past 5 years, often larger after he'd asked James for loans, or Lauren hinted at financial strain. James had given Ethan money, but safeguarded equal or greater sums for me, as if he foresaw a day I'd need independence. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. Mom, Lauren found a realtor to list the house. Showings start next week. Hope you're finding a place. I stared at the message, then at the statements. Ethan and Lauren were so sure they held all the power, oblivious to the foundation James had built for me. Tomorrow, I'd call the accountant to uncover the full scope of what James left behind. Then I'd decide how to wield the knowledge that my husband had loved me enough to ensure I'd never be at their mercy. Grief still cut deep, but beneath it, a quiet resolve was taking root. Morrison and Associates' accounting office sat in a modest strip mall, flanked by a dry cleaner and a tax service. I'd never been here. James always handled these meetings, dismissing them as tedious paperwork that would bore me. Now I saw he'd been shielding me from more than just monotony. Margaret Morrison, a woman near my age, with steel-gray hair in a neat bun and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, had managed Harper Construction's books for over 15 years. Her expression when I'd called yesterday was carefully neutral. Mrs. Harper, she said, gesturing to a chair across her cluttered desk. My condolences. James was a good man and a fair businessman. I'll miss our quarterly meetings. Thank you, I said, settling in, my bank statements tucked in my purse. I wish I'd known him as well in business as you did. The bank mentioned ongoing business income I didn't know about. Ethan said the business was sold years ago, barely covering debts. Sold? Margaret's brow furrowed. Mrs. Harper, Harper Construction wasn't sold, it was restructured. She turned to her computer, pulling up files. 5 years ago, James placed the company assets into a trust, the Harper Construction Trust, with you as the primary beneficiary, Margaret explained. The room seemed to shift. I own the construction company? I asked, stunned. The trust owns it, and you control the trust, Margaret clarified. It's been thriving. James was selective post-restructuring, focusing on smaller, reliable contracts for steady income, avoiding the volatility of big projects. She handed me several pages. These are the profit and loss statements for the past 5 years. My hands trembled as I scanned the figures. The annual profits were significant, explaining the trust account deposits I'd seen. The James retired, I said faintly. He wasn't working. He stepped back from daily operations, but oversaw major decisions, Margaret said. The construction work has been managed by Tom Bradley. You know him, I believe. I nodded. Tom, James's apprentice turned foreman of 20 years, had been at the funeral, his grief palpable. Tom's essentially run the company for 5 years, Margaret continued. James structured it so Tom earns a profit-based bonus, keeping him motivated and loyal. It's worked well. Why didn't James tell me? My voice was a whisper. Margaret hesitated. Mrs. Harper, James was concerned about family pressures. He mentioned Ethan's financial struggles and Lauren's expensive tastes. He feared that if the family knew about the business's ongoing income, it could jeopardize your security. The truth hit with crushing clarity. Every time Ethan asked James for a loan, every time Lauren commented on our apparent comfort, James had balanced helping our son with protecting my future. He was safeguarding me, I said, the realization heavy. He protected both of you differently, Margaret said softly. The loans to Ethan came from the business's operating account, not your personal assets. James documented them meticulously. She produced a folder. These are the loan agreements between the business and Ethan. I opened it, hands shaking. Pages of formal loan documents, signed by James and Ethan, detailed tens of thousands of dollars lent over 5 years for Ethan's ventures. Is Ethan repaying these? I asked, dreading the answer. Margaret's expression tightened. The payment schedule shows significant arrears. As of last month, the outstanding balance, with interest, is about $87,000. The figure struck like a fist. Ethan owed my business, nearly $90,000, while claiming James left only debts. What happens to these loans now? I asked. They transfer with the business assets, Margaret said. As the trust's owner, you can demand repayment or renegotiate terms. I pictured Ethan and Lauren measuring my kitchen, planning their takeover, assuming they deserved everything James built. There's more, Margaret added cautiously. Last month, Ethan contacted me, saying he'd take over the business's management after James's passing. He asked for ownership transfer documents. I told him I needed authorization from the trust's beneficiary, you. He seemed shocked you were involved. So Ethan had planned to seize the business too. Banking on my grief and ignorance, the betrayal cut deeper than I'd imagined. Margaret, confidentially, I said, if I wanted to keep the current business structure with Tom managing operations, is that possible? Absolutely, she replied. Tom's been anxious about the company's future and his job. If you maintain the status quo, he'd be reliable and grateful. I gathered the papers, my mind racing. The business was mine. Ethan's massive debt was real and enforceable. He and Lauren had no clue their plans rested on lies. I'd like to meet Tom soon, I said. And I want to explore all options regarding Ethan's loans. Of course, Margaret said. Shall I call Tom this afternoon? Yes, please. And Margaret, keep this confidential for now. Client confidentiality is paramount, she assured me. Driving home, my phone buzzed with a text from Lauren. Eleanor, the realtor needs a photographer tomorrow. Ensure the house is tidy and decluttered. First impressions are key for buyers. I stared at the message, then tucked my phone away without replying. Let them plan their photo shoot, envision their future in my home, spending money they thought was theirs. They didn't know the ground beneath their dreams was about to collapse. That evening, I sat in James's study, surrounded by his meticulously organized files. For the first time since his death, I saw his precision not as mere habit, but as a deliberate act of protection. He'd built a fortress around me, transaction by transaction, document by document. Tomorrow, I'd test the strength of those walls. The next morning, Tom Bradley sat at my kitchen table, his calloused hands cradling a coffee mug. At 55, his broad shoulders and weathered palms spoke of a life spent building, but his eyes carried a new weariness. Mrs. Harper, I've been worried sick since Mr. James passed, he said, voice thick with emotion. Ethan came by the job site last week, talking about evaluating assets and streamlining operations. Didn't sound good for folks like me. I poured another coffee, the routine grounding me. What exactly did Ethan say? He mentioned family financial troubles, said tough decisions were coming about the business. Tom replied, jaw tightening. Wanted a full list of contracts, equipment, and cash flow projections. Even asked for keys to the equipment yard and office. And your response? I told him I'd need to speak to whoever's in charge now. Mr. James always said, if anything happened to him, to wait for instructions from the legal owner. Tom met my gaze. He never said it'd be Ethan. Relief surged through me. James had anticipated this, ensuring Tom would guard the business, not surrender it to anyone claiming authority. Tom, I need to share something, but it stays between us for now. You have my word, ma'am. I spread out Margaret's documents. I own Harper Construction, not Ethan, not the estate, me. James transferred everything into a trust 5 years ago, and I'm the beneficiary. Tom's eyes widened as he scanned the papers. Well, I'll be damned, pardon my language. Mr. James. James was always 3 steps ahead. He was, I said, and these records show the business has thrived under your management. A flicker of pride crossed Tom's face. We've built a solid reputation, Mrs. Harper. Steady clients, quality work, fair prices. Mr. James taught me repeat customers outweigh any one-time deal. I want you to keep running things as you have, I said, but Ethan's been dishonest about the family's finances. What interactions have you had with him about the business? Tom's expression darkened. Several times over the years. He'd show up when Mr. James wasn't around, asking about cash flow, client payments, suggested the business could help with temporary funding for his investments. And your response? Told him to talk to his father. I'm not naive, Mrs. Harper. I saw what was happening. Tom's voice hardened. Last year, you showed up at the bank the same day we deposited a big payment from the Morrison project. Claimed it was a coincidence, but he was real curious about the deposit. My stomach twisted. Ethan had been tracking the business's income, timing his loan requests with cash influxes. Tom, do you think Ethan knows how much money flows through the business? He knows it's more than he's let on, but not the full scope, Tom said after a pause. Mr. James's dad might have recognized him at that point. I said, come on, that really happened. I know what you've met in the past. Mr. James has no doubts to this day would mean business. James kept business and personal finances separate on paper. When Ethan asked for help, James would say margins were tight, but find a way to give him a loan from the business account, not personal funds. Tom pulled out a worn notebook. I track everything, a habit Mr. James taught me. Ethan's received payments totaling about $93,000 over 5 years, higher than Margaret's figure. Payments, not loans? Structured as loans with schedules and interest. Tom clarified. But Mr. James never enforced repayment. Ethan missed payments, and James let it slide. So Ethan acts like he owes nothing, I said. Acts like it, Tom corrected. Whether he believes it or not, I can't say. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, I saw Ethan's SUV behind Tom's truck. That's why, son, I said quietly. Don't mention the business. Tom nodded, swiftly gathering the papers. Mrs. Harper, whatever you decide, I'm behind you. Mr. James trusted you with everything. That's enough for me. Ethan walked in without knocking, a habit James would have hated, but I'd tolerated. Morning, Mom, he said, barely glancing at Tom. Didn't expect company. Tom stopped by to check on me, I said smoothly. You know how kind he is, right? Ethan's eyes roamed the kitchen, appraising it for sale. Actually, Tom, good you're here. We need to discuss the business. Tom's face was a mask of neutrality. Oh? With Dad gone, changes are coming, Ethan said casually. The family needs to make practical decisions about assets and obligations. I watched, almost detached, as Ethan exuded confidence, oblivious to the truth. What changes? Tom asked. We'll need to decide whether to keep operations going or liquidate assets and settle debts, Ethan replied, as if discussing a trivial matter. I see, Tom said evenly. And who's making these falls? Ethan blinked, caught off guard. The family, obviously. I'll be handling Dad's business affairs going forward, Ethan declared, his tone brimming with assumed authority. Will you? Tom's voice remained even, but I caught a subtle challenge in his words. Mom, maybe make some fresh coffee, Ethan said, dismissing me, as he often did during important discussions. Tom and I need to go over technical details. But I held my ground, a resolve I hadn't felt in years steadying me. I'll stay. This is my kitchen and Tom is my guest. Ethan looked startled but shrugged. Fine. Tom, I need a full inventory of equipment, vehicles, and contracts, plus access to the business accounts to review the financials. I'd be happy to help, Tom said cautiously. Who should I coordinate with for account access authorization? With me, obviously, Ethan replied, his confidence flickering. I'm James Harper's son and heir. I see, Tom said. And do you have documentation proving your authority over Harper Construction's accounts? The kitchen went quiet, save for the soft ticking of the wall clock. Ethan's face reddened, caught between irritation and doubt. Look, Tom, you're misunderstanding, he said, his tone patronizing. This isn't a takeover. I'm just sorting out Dad's affairs to ensure everyone's taken care of. I can't do that if you're obstructing me. I'm not obstructing, Tom replied calmly. I just need to know who I'm taking orders from. Your father was strict about proper procedures. Ethan turned to me, expecting an ally. Mom, tell Tom I'm handling Dad's business now. I looked at my son, the man planning to sell my home, who'd racked up nearly $90,000 in debt while claiming James left nothing, and chose my side. Actually, Ethan, Tom's right to ask for documentation, I said softly. Your father was meticulous about these things. Ethan stared, dumbfounded. What are you talking about? I'm talking about doing things legally and properly, I said. Surely you understand why that matters. For the first time, Ethan's certainty wavered, and in that moment, I felt a spark of power I hadn't known in years. 3 days later, at 7 a.m., my phone rang. I'd been expecting it. Challenging Ethan's assumed authority was bound to provoke a reaction. Mom, we need to talk now. Ethan's voice was taut with anger. Lauren and I are coming over. 20 minutes. The line went dead. I dressed deliberately, choosing a navy dress James always said made me look poised. If this was to be a confrontation, I'd face it with dignity. They arrived precisely on time. Lauren's heels clicking sharply on the porch. I opened the door before they could knock, claiming the small advantage of hosting in my own home. Good morning, I said, as if greeting casual visitors. Lauren brushed past me into the living room, clutching her designer purse like a shield. Ethan followed, his face set in a grim line. They stood between me and the door, an intimidation tactic I recognized. Mom, I don't know what game you're playing, Ethan began. But Tom Bradley called yesterday, saying he can't share business information without proper authorization. What did you tell him? I settled into James's favorite armchair, its position giving me a clear view of the room. I told him to follow proper procedures. Your father would have expected that. Proper procedures? Lauren's voice was sharp. Ethan's James's son and heir. What more authorization does anyone need? Legal authorization, I said calmly. The kind tied to actual ownership. Ethan's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Dad's will leaves everything to the family. I'm the executor, so I manage all assets until probate. Not quite, I said, reaching for the folder of documents Margaret had provided, placed deliberately on the side table. Ethan and Lauren stiffened as I opened it. Your father's will covers his personal possessions and this house, I continued. But Harper Construction isn't part of his estate. It hasn't been since 2019. What? Ethan demanded. I set the trust documents on the coffee table. Harper Construction has been owned by the Harper Construction Trust since 2019. I'm the sole beneficiary. Silence blanketed the room. Lauren grabbed the documents, her manicured fingers trembling as she scanned the legal text. Ethan read over her shoulder, his face paling. This is impossible, Lauren whispered. You don't know anything about business. You never even balanced a checkbook. You're right, I admitted. James handled that, but he saw things in our family I was too trusting to notice. Ethan sank onto the sofa, as if his legs had buckled. But the business was struggling. Dad always said margins were tight, barely enough to keep it running. The business has been profitable, I corrected, handing him the financial statements. Here are the figures for the past 5 years. Watching Ethan process the numbers was like seeing someone realize they'd misread the entire game. These profits, he said faintly. Where did this money go? Some went to you, I said. Quite a lot, actually. I produced the loan documents. $87,000 over 5 years, to be exact. Lauren snatched the loan papers, her eyes darting frantically. These say loans, Lauren said, her voice trembling with accusation. Ethan, you told me those were gifts. You said your father was helping us get started. They were gifts, Ethan insisted, but his conviction faltered. Dad never asked for repayment. He never mentioned schedules. He did, I said softly. Margaret Morrison has records of every conversation, every missed payment, every time your father extended terms instead of demanding what you owed. The weight of their reality settled over them. Ethan had built his life on the assumption that James's generosity was limitless, likely borrowing against those expectations. This changes nothing, Lauren said, her voice sharp with desperation. The house still goes to Ethan. It's worth more than some small construction business. Is it? I asked calmly. Lauren's eyes flared with panic. Don't play games, Eleanor. This house is worth at least $400,000. You're right, it's valuable, I said. But there's the matter of the mortgage. Ethan's head snapped up. What mortgage? Dad said the house was paid off. It was, I replied. But 18 months ago, your father took out a home equity loan, a substantial one. I produced the final documents, found yesterday in James's study, filed under emergency funds. A $350,000 loan. The proceeds went into the Harper Construction Trust, making them part of my inheritance. Lauren's face drained of color. That's impossible. We'd have known. We'd have had to sign. Your father was the sole owner, I interrupted. I had rights of survivorship, not co-ownership. He didn't need anyone's signature. Ethan stared at the loan papers, bewildered. Why would he mortgage the house just to fund a business account? For the first time, I let my emotions show. Because he was protecting me, Ethan, ensuring I'd have security, no matter what. Protecting you from what? Ethan's voice was hoarse. From this, I said, gesturing to them. From being cast out of my home by family who saw me as a burden, not a person. From losing everything while others claimed what they thought they deserved. Lauren's composure shattered. You manipulated him. You tricked a dying man into changing everything. James wasn't dying when he set up the trusts, I said. He was planning. And the fact that he felt the need to plan for this should tell you how he saw our family. Ethan's hands shook as he set down the papers. Mom, we can work this out. You don't want to run a business, and this house, it's our family home. It should stay with us. It is staying with the family, I said. With me. As for the mortgage payments, they'll be covered by Harper Construction's income. Tom assures me the business is stable, and Margaret says the cash flow will easily handle the loan and my expenses. I stood, smoothing my dress. Now, you mentioned moving out. I think that's a fine idea. Not for me, but I'm sure you'll find a lovely place to start fresh. Ethan stared, stunned. Mom, you're not serious. After everything Dad did for you, everything our family means. Your father did everything for me, I cut in. He loved me enough to ensure I'd never be at anyone's mercy, including my own son's. Now I see why I needed that protection. Lauren stormed to the door, her face twisted with fury. This isn't over, Eleanor. We'll fight this. We'll contest everything. You're welcome to try, I said evenly. But everything James did was legal and documented. Margaret has provided all relevant papers to my attorney. Ethan lingered at the door, his expression a mix of confusion and pain. I don't understand, Mom. Why are you doing this to us? I'm not doing anything to you, I said. I'm refusing to let you do it to me. After they left, I sat in the quiet of my house, feeling a freedom I hadn't known in decades. James hadn't just given me money, he'd given me independence. No one could take that away. 6 months later, I stood on the deck of my oceanfront cottage, watching the Pacific's morning sun cast golden ripples across the waves. The sound of crashing surf had replaced the creaks of the old house. The Mendocino cottage was smaller, but entirely mine. Every piece of furniture, every decor choice reflected my taste, unburdened by 32 years of compromise. To my surprise, I discovered I had a knack for style when left to my own instincts. Harper Construction thrived under Tom Bradley's steady management. His Friday calls updated me on projects and contracts, with quarterly profits deposited directly into my account. I'd honored James's structure, keeping the business intact, and everyone benefited from the stability. The cottage was an unexpected gift. While researching coastal properties, I'd learned James had purchased it 3 years ago through the trust. Margaret Morrison had uncovered the deed to the Mendocino cottage while sorting business assets, along with a note in James's handwriting. For Eleanor's retirement, when she's ready for ocean air and no schedule but her own. Even in death, my husband was still watching over me. This morning was significant. My lawyer was due to finalize the last piece of my former life. Ethan and Lauren had indeed challenged the trust, hiring a costly attorney specializing in elder law and financial exploitation. Their efforts failed. The investigation confirmed James's arrangements were airtight, and Ethan's debt to the business was higher than initially thought, $96,000 with interest and penalties. The doorbell chimed at 10 o'clock sharp. James Patterson, no relation to Susan at the bank, was a punctual man who valued precision. He'd guided me through this ordeal with calm expertise. "Good morning, Eleanor," he said, settling into the window-side chair he favored during our meetings. "I have the final settlement agreement." I poured coffee from the French press, a small luxury of my new life, and sat across from him. "How did they react to the terms?" James's lips twitched with restrained amusement. As expected, Ethan's attorney argued family obligations trump business contracts, but the law is clear on debts. He handed me the documents. After 6 months of legal battles, Ethan and Lauren had agreed to a payment plan spanning 8 years, assuming no missed payments. "They pushed for a family forgiveness clause," James added. "Ethan broke down, claiming you were ruining your relationship with your only son over money." "And your response?" I asked. "I said I represent your financial interests, not family ties." I may have noted most mothers don't need to sue their children to collect legitimate debts. The settlement included a clause I particularly appreciated. If Ethan and Lauren defaulted, the business could garnish Ethan's wages or place liens on their property, ensuring I'd be paid regardless. "One more thing," James said, producing an envelope. This arrived yesterday. In Ethan's familiar handwriting was a note. "Mom, you may not forgive me, but I see now what Dad was doing. Losing nearly everything showed me how much I took for granted. Lauren and I are in counseling, and I'm working 2 jobs to meet payments. I hope someday you'll talk to me again. I'm sorry, Ethan." I folded the note carefully. It felt genuine, but it was 6 months late, driven by consequences, not remorse. "Any response?" James asked. "No," I said. "If Ethan wants to rebuild, he'll need to do it like he'll pay his debt, slowly, consistently, over time." After James left, I took my coffee to the deck and reread Ethan's note. Grief lingered. For James, for the son I thought I'd raised, for the family I believed we had, but beneath it was a deeper satisfaction. I'd stood up for myself when it mattered most. My phone rang, an unfamiliar number. "Hello, Mrs. Harper. This is Linda Morrison, Margaret's daughter," said a warm voice. I recalled Linda, a nurse at the regional hospital. "Mom shared your story, how you rebuilt after family challenges. I'm starting a support group for women facing financial manipulation by family. Would you share your experience?" The request surprised me. I'm not sure what I'd say. "We'd be amazed how many women face entitled children, secretive spouses, or families who exploit kindness," Linda said. "Your story could inspire them to know their rights and find courage." I gazed at a pelican diving into the bay. 6 months ago, I was a grieving widow facing eviction by my own son. Now I was independent, living where I chose, beholden to no one. "When would you like me to speak?" I asked. "Really? You'll do it?" "I will," I said. "Not about revenge or lawsuits, but about the line between love and being a doormat, about knowing your finances, about the gift James gave me by shielding my future, even from our son." We scheduled the talk for next month. After hanging up, I realized helping others felt like a purpose, a way to honor James's foresight and my hard-won independence. That evening, I followed my new ritual, sitting on my deck with a glass of wine, watching the sunset. This view, this peace, this freedom was mine. No one could vote me out of my own life or deem me disposable. The cottage was quiet, save for the ocean's rhythm and distant seabird calls. Tomorrow, I'd tend my garden or lunch at the bistro where the owner reserved my favorite window table. Simple joys, wholly mine. Ethan's debt would be paid, whether through his effort or legal enforcement. But the true victory wasn't financial. It was the strength to demand the respect I deserved. As the sky darkened, I raised my glass to James, wherever he was. He'd loved me enough to ensure I'd never be helpless, never at the mercy of those who saw me as expendable. He'd given me everything to pass this test. The ocean murmured against the shore, and in my home on my deck, living my life, I understood freedom. Never again begging for a place at a table that was mine by right. It was peace. I'm curious about you reading my story. What would you do in my shoes? Have you faced something similar? Share below. Also, check out 2 other stories, channel favorites, that might surprise you. Thank you for staying with me.